Hey, welcome to my channel. I'm a late diagnosed autistic human being from France living in the UK, and I make videos about my own experience as a late diagnosed autistic person. And today, I don't really have a plan for this video. I just watched yesterday a video from a French autistic content creator because I'm from France and most of the autistic content creators I've been watching since discovering my autism have been British and American and Canadian, just English speaking creators. I wanted to find this video is gonna go all over the place, by the way, just giving you a disclaimer, like this is just gonna be word vomit, just hanging out with you, talking about whatever comes to mind. Okay, just prepare yourself, maybe grab a drink or something. So I wanted to find some French-speaking, just French autistic content creators, mainly because I wanted to try and educate my in-laws as much as possible. As you might know, I'm not really in contact with my biological family, which is something I want to talk about in this video, by the way. But my only family is my partner and his mum and stepdad, whom I call my in-laws in my videos. Well, that's what they're called, but and so they're French speaking. They're French speakers. They don't understand English. You know, I wanted to educate them because both my partner and I got diagnosed autistic this year, and he got diagnosed with ADHD as well, and we have strong suspicions that his mom might be autistic as well, but she is a little bit in denial and doesn't really want to see it, doesn't want to even, I don't want to say that she doesn't want to acknowledge it in her own son, because it's not completely true, but she has a hard time accepting it. And so I wanted to send her videos from autistic content creators to kind of educate her on the subject and maybe, you know, see if she recognizes herself in any of them, and just, you know. So I found a few, and it's been a really interesting experience because you can just see the different perspective, because it's a different culture, you know, and over there Asperger's was still a thing until 2018, and like it's just completely different. And if any of you speak French and you would like to watch those content creators, I will link them down below. I watched a video by a content creator called Mésange, whom I've heard people call the French Meg, you know, from I'm Autistic Now What. I can kind of see it. I don't agree with everything she says, but I still value her opinion, of course, and she's part of the autistic community. And anyways, all that to say that she made a video that I watched yesterday in which she basically films herself for about 10 minutes unmasked. And I thought, well, that's interesting. She's just being herself, and she's not, there's no actual point to the video. She's just talking about her, you know, special interests and stuff, and being unmasked. And I thought that's an interesting idea that I'd like to try. And then a bunch of stuff happened yesterday, and I got super dysregulated and ended up posting a Harry Potter theme meme on my community tab. And so today I felt like processing everything that happened yesterday, and I thought, why not just turn on the camera and make a video out of it, because you're clearly all very interested in what I have to say. So I've talked about this before, but and by the way, I don't feel like I mask that much in my videos. I edit my videos to remove all the pauses and the, you know, hesitations, and so to make it more pleasant, a more pleasant watching / listening experience for you guys. But other than that, I don't feel like I put on a mask much. Otherwise, I don't think I would be doing this for so long, because all the other YouTube channels I tried to have in the past, I was masking, and so it wasn't a very good experience, and you know, it didn't last very long. So I think if I was masking, I think I wouldn't still be here making videos 5 months on, or however long it's been, 6 months on. I've mentioned this before, but I don't see a lot of people. I don't have a lot of people in my life. I don't socialize much. We moved here two years ago. We haven't really made friends or anything like that over here. And even before that, when we lived in London, same thing. There's only one person that, let's say, I met after school that I kind of stayed in touch with, and that's an ex student of mine, whom I taught French to for a few years, in person and then online. And we kind of stayed in touch. She's really nice, and she's had 2 kids since then, and so, you know, we've been talking. Yeah, so, but I wouldn't consider her a friend per se. I mean, I don't know where I stand in her eyes, because she's very much neurotypical. I'm not very used to that, and I never know, you know, with neurotypicals, if they mean it when they say that you're their friend, or if it's just a matter of speaking, or they're trying to make me feel good, or whatever. Just so, all that to say that apart from her, all of the people that I was friends with or acquaintances and stuff are back in France, and I don't see them ever, to be honest, and we've grown away from each other, and the majority of them don't. Honestly, I don't feel like they tried to really stay in touch with me. Most of the time it was me doing the effort, of making the effort to, you know, talk to them, send them messages and stuff. I don't really have people in my life, is what I'm trying to say. And there were a lot of friendships or acquaintances that I realized were pretty toxic as well. So all the people in my life that I have at this point are my partner, my cats, and my in-laws. And so when I socialize, it's usually over the phone with my in-laws, or visiting them, or them visiting us. These past few months, because of burnout, it's been really difficult socializing, and it's been very difficult hanging out with them, talking to them. I made a whole vlog of the last time I saw my in-laws, which was in April, when I visited them in Switzerland, and it went really poorly because I was in burnout already at that point, and I just didn't have the energy to socialize, to mask, to, you know, it was horrible. And since then, since coming back, I've been trying to stay away from the phone because even phone calls with them have been really difficult. And every time I think I can do it, I'm strong enough, you know, we have a phone call with them, and I always come out of it feeling so drained and stressed and sad and angry, and, you know, and all these emotions take so much energy out of me and really dysregulate me, and I always end up feeling like crap afterwards, essentially. So that's been difficult, but it's mainly because, well, beyond the fact that socializing is hard for me at this point because of burnout, it's also, I've also been struggling because every time we call my in-laws, we inevitably land on the topic of autism, which has been the main thing that's been going on since in the last 6 months, since I discovered my autism and then my partner discovered his autism and we both got diagnosed. That's been the main topic. What's really frustrating is that my mother-in-law is in denial about it. I don't know. I mentioned that a lot in my vlog, my Switzerland vlog, but I feel really misunderstood and invalidated around my in-laws, and I know it's not. It's mostly, I don't think they're doing it on purpose, is what I'm trying to say. And I have a lot of rejection sensitive dysphoria, so I know it's probably mostly in my head, but I can't help feeling so invalidated every time I talk to them, especially if we talk about autism and stuff. It's the little things, you know, like, for example, yesterday, you know, I was trying to explain for the, I don't know how many times, how it's difficult for me to socialize with my burnout, and because she was saying things like, you know, that she's worried about us because we're far away from them, because they live in Switzerland and we're in the UK. My partner was saying, you know, if we were closer geographically, I don't think it would make much of a difference. And she was saying, yeah, but we would see each other more often and stuff. And I was like, you know, right now, because of burnout, I'm not sure we would, because it's really difficult for me. And that's why I struggled so much when we came in April and stuff. And she was like, yeah, well, I know that's the reason why we couldn't see each other. We can't see each other in July for my son's birthday. And I was like, why do you have to make it sound reproachful though? And I know it's not necessarily, that's where it gets complicated, right? Is because my partner and I have strong suspicions that she's autistic as well. Because one of the things she struggles with is her delivery of the things she says. And a lot of the time, when we tell her, you know, that sounded a little harsh, she's like, no, but I didn't mean it like that. And she often says like how things come out wrong, you know, like she wants to say something and then she doesn't have any ill intent, but the way it comes out hurts people, which sounds very autistic to me. And so I'm like trying not to take it personally, because I'm like, she was probably just stating a fact that it's true that we decided not to see them for my partner's birthday in July because I don't have it in me to socialize with them and stuff. So she's just stating a fact, but it's just the way she says it really triggers my RSD. All these little things in the conversation, all these little things, like, I don't know, I'll be describing the crushing fatigue of burnout, and I'm not saying she's never experienced burnout. She probably has, because, I mean, she had to leave her job at the beginning of last year and hasn't been working since, so she has experienced burnout. But I don't know, I was trying to describe the fatigue of like burnout that I'm experiencing right now, where like I can't do anything. And she was like, well, yeah, you know, it's the same for me when I don't exercise enough and I'm more tired. And I'm like, yeah, but it's the reason why I don't exercise enough is because I'm tired to begin with. Like, it's not because I don't exercise enough that I'm tired. And she was like, yeah, I get it, but it's like, I don't know what it is. The way we communicate, the things she says, how she says them, and how I receive them and interpret them, really triggers my sensitive dysphoria, rejection sensitive dysphoria. And then afterwards I spend hours replaying the interaction in my head, and also all the things she says about autism that are completely wrong. You know, I know it's because she's trying to figure herself out, but it still triggers me. She's been saying a lot lately, like, oh, everyone masks. And no matter how much I try to explain it to her, I've sent her videos from content creators explaining it. I've sent her like a written description of autistic masking versus neurotypical masking. And she still says things like, but I think everyone masks. And I'm like, and I know it's because she probably experiences masking. And because she's in denial, she thinks, oh, but everyone does that then, because I'm clearly neurotypical and I do that. I don't know what it is, but and I can't reason with myself. Like, I can't, even though I know it's part of her denial, it's part of her, you know, process and stuff, like, I can't help getting triggered. And then after the phone call, I'll spend hours replaying the interaction and hearing all the cringy things she said and all the hurtful things she said that really triggered me. And I keep re-triggering myself and feeling so angry. And then my partner doesn't really, I mean, it's not that he doesn't understand, but he's like, he understands why I'm angry. It makes me angry, but he's like trying to reason with me and calm me down. And I'm like, you know, but it needs to, you know, I don't know, I need to express it, you know? And I end up being so dysregulated, feeling so invalidated. I don't know, it's like, I don't know how to describe it. It's like a dull emotional ache. And every time I'm like, okay, I gotta stay away from that phone. But it's difficult, you know, because sometimes I want to talk to my in-laws. Sometimes I don't know, I feel so invested in educating her on autism. Not only for herself, but also so she understands us better, so she stops being in denial about her son's autism, and so that when we have kids, if they're autistic too, that she'll know how to understand them and stuff. Like, it's a big deal, you know, to me at least. And it's so frustrating because every time we talk to her, and every time my partner tries to explain one of his autistic traits to her, she's always like, oh, but that's your ADHD, isn't it? And I'm like, no, it's not. No, it's not. It's freaking autism. Can't you just register it in your head? It took literal years for her to accept that my partner has ADHD. He's known for years. He only found out about his autism a few months ago, but he's known about his ADHD for years, okay? And even though it's absolutely obvious, at first, my mother-in-law was really in denial about it, and she didn't want to accept it. And I think it's because she felt some type of guilt, some type of responsibility that she didn't get her son tested or assessed when he was younger, so he would have received the support that he needed and stuff like that. She felt some type of guilt and responsibility, and so she didn't want to accept it. And I remember some pretty heated conversations we had, you know, with them, where my partner was trying to, you know, explain to them all his ADHD traits and how it was difficult for him because his whole life, everyone, including his own parents, made him feel bad about his ADHD traits. His, you know, problems with executive dysfunction and his problems regulating his attention and his hyperactivity and just his impulsivity, his time blindness, the fact that, you know, he used to lose things a lot, struggle with organization, like all the ADHD traits, okay? He used to be so, and still is to some extent, used to get bullied for it, even by his own parents. Like, you know, they would tell him like how he was so lazy, and it was like, and still to this day, and it really annoys me, whenever my partner mentions an ADHD trait, his mother is like, well, yeah, you've always been like that, that's for sure. Like, really, like, I don't know, there's an expression in French that says like turning the blade in the wound, like really, you know, like making it worse. And I'm like, do you have to say things like that? Like, I know you're frustrated as a mother because your son's ADHD frustrated you and you didn't know about it, and so now you feel bad that you didn't know about it and stuff, but you have to say things like that, you know? Do you have to really put salt on the wound? I don't know what the expression is in English, but it took her years to acknowledge her son's ADHD, and then once it had clicked in her head, that was all she could talk about, and trying to send him 1,000 articles about it and like solutions, and putting pressure on him to try and get medication for it, try and get the diagnosis for it. So she basically went from 0 to 100, you know? Now she's doing the same thing with autism, is she's completely denying it, and she basically says that all of my partner's difficulties come from his ADHD, and she's got like, what are these called? The things you put on horses so they focus on the road ahead and they don't see what's on the sides. Well, that's what she has going on right now. And it's really annoying because every time my partner says that he struggles with it, and I can tell in the way he speaks that he's scared, not scared, but hesitant to talk about his autism sometimes, because he knows she's gonna invalidate him, and so he'll say something about, and it's like the word autism itself is almost taboo. Like, when we talk about it in general, not necessarily in relation with her son, she's fine using the word, But she hasn't, since my partner got his diagnosis, and even before that when he was self-diagnosed, she's never used autism and her son's name in the same sentence. And I know that because I've been paying attention to that, how she is avoiding it. And every time I try and push it a little bit, I'm like trying to get her to say it, to acknowledge it. She kind of does, but also not really. And it drives me insane that she won't acknowledge it. And I really struggle to tell myself to just not worry about it. It's not my problem. It's probably a question of time. You know, it will happen over time. I don't need to think about it. I can't help getting very invested in it at the expense of my health, because it hits home, you know? And so it hurts me, because every time I have a conversation with my in-laws, it's the same thing again and again. She'll say things like that, and then I get triggered, and then it takes me hours, if not days, to be okay again and not think about it too much. And whenever I think about it, I get angry again. And I know my reactions are a bit disproportionate, but that's just how I'm feeling. You know, I don't know, I don't really feel, I feel a bit alone in this. I mean, my partner agrees with all of that, and like how his mom is in denial and it's super annoying and stuff, but he doesn't feel as strongly about it as I do. And so I can't share all these emotions with him because he doesn't experience them as much, and like is kind of put off by them sometimes, because I can be pretty extreme with my emotions, especially when there's a perceived injustice, which is the case here. That really triggers my sense of justice and right and wrong, and I can't let it go, you know? And I wish I could, you know, because it's really taxing for me experiencing this every time I have a fucking phone call with my in-laws. I wish it were not that emotionally taxing. I'm not doing it on purpose. And yeah, so that happened yesterday. And every time that happens, I always have a moment of like, okay, if you keep going like this, things aren't gonna get better. You need to, I almost force myself to not think about it, not ruminate on it, and just tell myself it doesn't matter. It's a process. It will take time. She'll eventually come around, you know. It's not easy, but I try to tell myself that. And like that happened yesterday, and was one of the reasons why I was so dysregulated. And when I mean dysregulated, like I was bordering a meltdown. I don't know if I had kind of a meltdown and then it went away. I feel like these days I have more like subdued meltdowns compared to when I was younger. But I did have like a couple hours where I felt really, I don't know how to describe it, but like I felt really uncomfortable in my mind, in my body, and I wanted to, you know, I had those urges to like hit things, throw things around, or and I had urges to cry, and I felt really irritable, and like, so I had kind of a meltdown going on at the end of the day. And it was caused by this phone call that I had. It was caused by the fact that it was quite hot, and heat is, I mentioned in my video on sensory sensitivities, I'm very intolerant to heat, and it's one of my biggest like sensory triggers. So I was trying to deal with the heat, and also the fact that I was hungry. I mean, I didn't feel hungry because I don't have a strong interoception, so I don't get the signals telling me that I'm hungry. But if I miss a meal for some reason, or I don't eat enough for some reason, because I'm off my routine for one reason or another, which was the case yesterday, I reached a point where it was like 8 or 9 p.m. and I hadn't eaten anything since lunch, and I didn't have much to eat for lunch, so I realized I didn't feel hungry, but I realized, oh, I need to eat, and that's probably one of the contributing factors for what I'm experiencing right now. And then something else that happened was I got a phone call from my mother. As I mentioned in the past, I don't really have a relationship with my parents anymore. Because they're very toxic and abusive and narcissistic, and so I haven't seen them since early 2023, when I was forced to see them when I visited my great aunt in the hospital before she died. So I haven't seen them in a year and a half. I haven't gotten no contact. They can still reach me in writing. I don't talk to them on the phone or anything like that. But my dad sends me emails from time to time, and my mom regularly tries to call me and sends me messages on WhatsApp. And lately she's started a new trend of leaving me voice messages on my phone. She left me one for my birthday, and she sent me one yesterday. Every time I'm like hoping, thanks to some miracle, she will, she's had a revelation and she is ready to take accountability for all the ways in which she hurt me. And every time I'm disappointed, and I know it's not healthy to cling on to that hope, and I know there's no hope, they won't change because they're too far gone. If they had it in them to be healthy parents, they would have been. In the last 27 years that I've been on this earth, they have never demonstrated their ability to be healthy, supportive, loving parents. So why would they now, So I know it's a vain hope, it's vain hope. But something's keeping me from going no contact at all. And I think it's because I've gotten no contact in the past. For a year and a half, I didn't talk to them. I thought I was never going to see them again. I did it really overnight. And this time, it's taking me a long time to decide to go no contact, because I think deep down I know that when I do, it's for good and I won't look back. And so it's a pretty heavy decision. And also, I've done a lot of work on my trauma. I'm not triggered as much as I used to be. The fact that I'm able to talk about this right now and not have my heart beating out of my chest, for example, is a sign to me that I've come a long way, because I used to be so triggered by my parents, even thinking about it, talking about it, hearing from them. And now it doesn't affect me as much. I've done a lot of work, and CBT helped a lot with that, kind of reframing the way I see them, stuff like that. I used to be, because they're so manipulative, I used to be really blind to their abuse. And the more time I spent away from them, the more time I spent analyzing what happened and talking about it with my partner, my in-laws and therapists and such. The more I watched videos online, the more I read books about it, the more I realized all the ways in which my parents abused me. But at first, I didn't see any of it. I was really blind to it. And I believed all the lies that they told me, about them, about the world, all the ways in which they tried to shape me in a certain way. It took me years to detangle all of this and reach a point where now I'm not affected by their manipulation anymore. I see very clearly through their manipulation and stuff like that. And honestly, at this point, I see them like they're broken records or something, because they're not evolving. I have kept evolving and they haven't, and so I'm growing more and more away from them, and they're just staying the same. So I'm not affected by their manipulation anymore. Because back when I used to be really affected by it, it was because I still held some guilt deep down. I still felt some type of responsibility, because I still believed some of the things they said about me. and the fact that I deserved the abuse, the fact that I was a bad person, I believed some of that, which was made worse by my undiagnosed autism, which already made me feel broken. And so, it was easier then for me to believe them when they said that I was a bad person. And then I did a lot of work on myself to realize that it wasn't true, that they were bad people and they were projecting all their crap on me since I was born, and I wasn't responsible for any of it. So it took a while, but I've come to a point where I'm like not affected by it much anymore. Like I can talk about it without feeling like shit. Like even when I receive messages or phone calls from them, like of course it affects me to some extent, but it's nothing compared to what it used to be. Like I used to be so affected by it that it would take me literal days, if not weeks, to recover from a simple message from my mom. Like now I'm like, I receive it, I read it, 5 minutes later I've forgotten about it, like yeah, I've come a really long way. But that's also one of the reasons why I haven't gone no contact this time around yet, is because I'm not affected by it as much as I used to be. So it doesn't feel as pressing, as necessary as it used to, because I've managed to detach myself from it. But I also know that part of me is still holding on to that vain hope that maybe one day they'll change. I know that they won't, because they had plenty of opportunities to do that and they didn't. But I don't know, part of me, however small, still clings on to that hope. And so whenever I receive a message from them, it's a mix of hope and fear all mixed in together, dread. And once again, the message I got from my mom yesterday was the same as always. She basically once again didn't take any accountability, any responsibility for her actions or my dad's actions, and she basically tries to paint things in a way that make me look like the enemy and make them look like the poor victims, the perfect parents who only want what's best for their daughter. They don't speak like that, just me. They only want what's best for their daughter. They're so good, and they're very unlucky to have a daughter like me. Like they deserved better, and that's how they describe things to others as well. I don't know, I'm just amazed by how she dares pretend like, and it's part of the gaslighting, right? It's part of the manipulation, is not mentioning the elephant in the room and pretending that nothing bad happened. And for some crazy reasons, I woke up one day, decided not to talk to them anymore. But it's not actually, there's no actual reason, trying to drive me insane. Basically, that's what gaslighting is trying to make you doubt yourself, trying to make you doubt your own reality, and then you end up questioning yourself, and that's what she did my whole life, and it took me a long time to realize it. But now I don't fall into I don't get tricked anymore. But she still tries. And she can cry on cue and stuff. Like, she can do some pretty extraordinary stuff as a narcissistic person. It's quite impressive. When you're not a direct victim of it, and you look at it from the outside, it's quite the spectacle. It's quite the show. She's quite impressive, honestly. She can cry on cue. She will use any tool she has in her arsenal. Is that the word? She really went all out yesterday. I mean, the voice message lasted, 5-10 minutes? She tried to use the family card, which I'm like, since when do you care about family? Because she never has. But like, when it's in her best interest, she pretends that she cares and things like that. And then she was like trying to use my partner's card, saying how it's his birthday soon and if he wanted to come to the house. And I'm like, bitch, you really think after everything that happened I want to go visit you? Like, really? Like, I'm trying to paint things in a way that made it seem like the reason why we don't visit them anymore is because it has to do with the house, and like that the house isn't comfortable enough or whatever. I'm like, that's the least of my problems. And I know she, obviously it's part of her manipulation, she knows perfectly well that that's not the reason why we don't visit anymore, but you know, she's dodging it. She's really like dodging the elephant in the room, really pretending like it doesn't exist. And then talking about my dad who abused me physically throughout my childhood. And I told her many times about it, and every time she was like, oh, don't make such a big deal out of it. You know, it didn't happen every day, did it? It didn't leave bruises on you, did it? So it was fine. And so she'd rather protect my awful dad than her own daughter. That just shows what kind of person she is, really. And she was talking about my dad and like trying to make it sound so innocent, trying to make it sound like we're all a big happy family and we get along so well. I'm like, bitch, do you realize I haven't seen you in a year and a half and you're speaking like all is well? What's wrong with you? She was joking around on the phone. She basically goes from crying to laughing to talking in a very authoritarian voice to, you know, depending on the message she's trying to convey. Basically, her goal when she leaves messages like that is to try and make me feel as bad as she possibly can. Yeah, like I said, she's trying to use every tool she has at her disposal, tools that have worked in the past, tools that she hasn't tried yet. She's gonna see if it works, you know, like trying to make me feel guilty about my grandmother, trying to make me feel guilty about anything she can, basically. And like, you know, saying things like that she knows in my eyes she's not my mother anymore, but to her I'll always be her daughter. And things like, you know, that she thinks about me all the time. I'm in her nights, I fill her nights, I fill her days, I'm all she thinks about, I'm all she lives for, which I know is completely wrong. It's completely false because she only lives for herself. But she's trying to make it sound like I'm everything to her, and you know, it's just a classic toxic parent manipulation, right? Trying to make you feel as bad as possible, which, to begin with, if you're trying to convince me that you're a good parent, maybe don't do that, because that's glaringly obvious. Maybe try and make me feel good instead. I don't know, just a thought. But you know, good parents, that's what they do usually. They try and make their children feel good about themselves, not the other way around, you know. Yeah, so she'll try everything she can, and it sounds ridiculous. It sounds absolutely ridiculous. And sorry if you hear a cat in the background, that's my cat crying for me to open the door. And like something else that's absolutely, that was mind-blowing to me. There have been several people in my life, either family members or family friends, that have known me my whole life, right? Who have stopped talking to me overnight after talking to her. And she thinks I don't notice that. Literally, like, I got in touch with a cousin of mine around my birthday, so in April, because we have pretty much the same birthday. She was born one day after me, and so I got in touch with her because I remembered her from the only time in my life when I saw her was when we were 9 years old, and it was for my great uncle's funeral. So we basically have her granddad was my her granddad was my great uncle, to kind of situate our relationship. I don't remember how I stumbled upon her social media accounts, and I was like, hey, that's cool, like I remember her from when we were 9, and I wonder if she remembers me, and she seems to be doing some really interesting stuff because we both have Armenian descent from that side of the family. And her granddad, so my great uncle, was a famous photographer who took a lot of pictures of famous actors and stuff back in the day. Like, he died in the 80s or something. You know, she made some projects to like honor his memory, that granddad she never met and stuff like that. Whatever, I'm digressing here, but I thought it was really interesting and I wanted to connect with her, and so I got in touch with her on Facebook and we talked a whole evening. We exchanged messages and we had a really good, we got on really well, you know. I shared my own social media accounts with her and stuff, and then she told her dad that we were talking, and her dad is my mother's cousin, and they've seen each other a few times, and so he was like, oh good, like ask your cousin if she can give me her mom's number, because I haven't talked to her mom in a while and I'd like to call her and stuff. And so I felt, and she was like, my dad's asking for your mom's phone number, and I knew at that point that it wasn't gonna go super well, because obviously, like, because of, you know, the situation with my mother, and I know that she tends to ruin things for me whenever she can, and so I was like, okay. But I didn't really see a way out of this, because obviously if I were to say that I'm not on good terms with my mother, like, that tends to push people away. I've noticed in the past, whenever I was open about my difficult relationship with my parents and how toxic they are and stuff, that tends to gross people out, and then they're like, I don't want to be friends with you anymore, because it's such a taboo, you know, in our society, unfortunately. So I was like, I'm not gonna be open about it because she's gonna run away, but I also like can't really find a reason not to give them my mother's phone number, so I gave it to them. And I'm not kidding, he called her that day. He called my mom that day. I never heard from my cousin ever again. It's been over 2 months now. Like, I sent her message, she asked me a question, I replied, I asked her another question, follow-up question after that, and never got an answer from her. And so I think what happened is her father called my mother. He was like, hey, your daughter is talking to my daughter, and that's how I got your number. And my mom must have been like, oh, you know, my daughter. And then she must have said crap about me to him, which I know she's capable of, because that's what she did like 5 years ago when my parents came to visit us for Christmas. Well, they invited themselves over at Christmas when we lived in London, and my in-laws were here. Was it the last time they saw each other? Might be. And my parents basically pulled my in-laws to one side while my partner and I were making Christmas lunch, Christmas dinner, whatever. And she started talking shit about me to my in-laws and saying, like, lying about me and saying horrible things about me. And so my in-laws afterwards were kind of horrified, and they came to me and they were like, this is what your parents said about you, I'm really sorry. And I was like, she really thought, like, my mom really thought that my in-laws were gonna believe her and not come to me. Like, she thought it was gonna work, that my in-laws and my partner would leave me, because that was the whole point, is she's trying to make me feel as isolated as possible so she can dig her claws into me. And so she really thought that because of that, my in-laws were gonna tell my partner, break up with her, let's leave her all alone. And like, no, obviously my in-laws were like, here's what your parents told us. Obviously they knew it wasn't true, because like, we're very close and they know everything, so they knew. And my parents even told shit about my partner to my in-laws, so my in-laws were like, we know it's not true, like, we know our son, you know. Like, and so I don't know, so my in-laws were like, they said this about you and stuff like that. And I was like, and I'm glad that happened, regardless of how painful it was, because it was one of the things that really, really, really made me realize that my parents are really dangerous people. Because when people start lying about you to other people in order to mess things up for you, that's when you know that they don't have your best interest at heart. And until that point, I didn't know. I didn't know. I was naive enough to genuinely believe that my parents wanted what was best for me, you know? That's so naive of me. That was one of those aha moments that led to then me going no contact with them and stuff. Anyway, why am I saying this? Yeah, so I know for a fact that they're capable, perfectly capable of talking crap about me to people to get what they want and try and isolate me as much as possible. So I knew it wasn't gonna end well when I shared her phone number to my cousin, and as I feared, she never talked to me again. Which I'm like, I don't mind it too much because we were never very close to begin with, but obviously it's annoying because it's yet another way that my mom is interfering with, you know, my life, trying to mess things up for me, and like in a way it still gives her some kind of power, which I'm not happy about, but that's all I can do. But she's definitely done that several times in the past. There are two family friends that I can think of. My great aunt's best friend. She's known me since I was little. She always messaged me for Christmas, birthdays. She always gave me money, like she even gave money to my partner, like for birthdays and stuff. We talked from time to time, and then my great aunt passed away. Obviously, she was devastated by it, as was I, and so that was the last time I talked to her. So a year and a half ago, and was after my great aunt's death. I messaged her saying how sorry I was that she'd lost her best friend, and like she was like asking how I was dealing with it, and I, you know, was like, I'm not dealing with it well, obviously, because she was everything to me. That was the last time we talked, and I haven't heard from her since. And I know she's still alive because my mum has mentioned her in some of her messages, so I know she spends time with my mum, and I'm not dumb. You know, I know that the reason why she has stopped talking to me is because my mum must have said, who knows what my mum said about me, you know? She's very manipulative, she's very convincing, she's very charismatic, you know, that's basically the definition of a narcissistic person, but like, she'll convince you of anything. Like, to give you an example of how, and I may have mentioned that in a video in the past, I don't know, but to give you an idea of how manipulative she is and how much she messes with your mind to the point where you're completely within her grasp and she can do whatever she wants with you because you're like so confused, you don't even know what's happening anymore. She visited us here in October 2022. At some point during her stay, she stayed for a week. At some point, we went to our local co-op. She insisted on buying us flowers. And she knows I don't like cut flowers, but she doesn't care about that. She insisted on buying us flowers, and I was so all over the place, so confused, so overwhelmed in every way you can imagine, that I didn't even realize that there were lilies in the bouquet, which are notoriously very, very poisonous to animals, and we have 2 cats. And why it stuck with me so much is because both my partner and I know perfectly well that lilies are highly toxic to pets, and we never would have brought home a bouquet of lilies, you know, in normal circumstances. But because we were so fucked up in the head, literally, that's the effect that my parents have on you, that we were completely, we didn't even, we registered that they were lilies, but we didn't make the connection in our heads of like, no, we can't bring them home. We've had pets my whole life. My parents have had pets their whole life. They know that lilies are toxic. So I don't even know if that wasn't like a move on her part. I don't want to even begin to think of that, because just like the thought of her wanting to harm our cats, just like, that's too much for me. But so we brought home the flowers. They stayed in the freaking kitchen for days before we woke up. I think it wasn't until she was gone that we realized, oh my god, there have been poisonous flowers in the kitchen for days that the cats could have, and they don't even need to nibble on them or eat them. Sometimes just brushing against the plant and like licking their fur is enough to kill them. That's how poisonous they are. And we were absolutely horrified when we realized that our cats could have died, and we like went to the vet and we were like, we don't know, like they might have consumed some of the flowers. They've been here for days, like we didn't realize. And like thankfully they were fine. But that just shows how absolutely messed up you can be around her. And so obviously you're more susceptible to manipulation when you're in that state. Almost like you can't think for yourself, you know? So she's very, what I'm trying to say is she's very manipulative, very convincing. And so I'm not surprised that I can think of 4 people in my life that have stopped talking to me that I think is because of my mom. So that's her way to make me pay for not letting her hurt me further, not letting her have control over me. She's punishing me for that, which, you know, I'm fine with at the end of the day. I don't need those people. If they're gonna believe what my mom has to say about me over a lifetime of knowing me, then I don't want them in my life. I haven't tried to win them over or anything like that. Like, there's only so much she can do anyway, because like, you know, the people who matter the most to me are out of her reach. So I'm not worried about her doing more damage to me in that sense. But that just goes to show how much of a horrible person she is. And and in the message that she left me yesterday, she was crazy enough to mention my cousin. And she was like, my cousin said that you were in touch with his daughter, and so that's how I got some news about you through him. And I was like, do you honestly think I don't know that you said crap about me to him? And that's the reason why my cousin doesn't talk to me anymore. Like, do you not honestly think I'm that dumb? I don't know. I don't even want to keep talking about this because it's been too long already, and it's pointless, really. And every time I receive a new message from my parents, I'm like, 90% of the time, I'm like, there's nothing to answer here. Like, I don't have anything to say. What can you say to this? She's pretending like she is interested in knowing how I'm doing, but clearly she's not. Because there are other ways she could, if she was really only interested in knowing how I'm doing, well, first of all, she wouldn't have done everything she could to push me away, obviously, but like, there are other ways that she could find out how I'm doing, but she's not trying because that's not what she's really interested in. She's only interested in getting me back under her control, having control over me again. And she'll stop at nothing to make that happen. And she'll use anything and anyone she can to get what she wants. So yeah, I obviously have nothing to say to her. Every time I hear from her, I'm like, it gives me one more reason to go no contact. And I know it will happen someday. Basically, she thinks that just, you know, she's using that thing that we hear a lot in our society, which is that blood is thicker than water. Is that the expression? Basically, that, you know, family is everything, and it's the only people you can count on, and stuff like that, and you shouldn't walk away from family or things like that. And I want to say, for most families are healthy enough, you know, like, I'm not talking about, you know, you're arguing a lot and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, you're still, like, the majority of people mean well, and they love their family, and even if they don't always get along, there's still love and support at the end of the day, you know? That's most families, thankfully, because that would be, what a world we would be living in otherwise. It's not true of every family, but my mom it's part of my mom's manipulation to make me think that, and it's very mixed messages, right? Because I grew up hearing her say how family is crap and family sucks, and then at the same time she has expectations of me based solely on the fact that we share the same blood. And I'm like, contradictory much? But she'll say things like, and it's not just my mom, my father as well, she'll say things like, I believe I have a right to know what you're doing with your life. I'm like, do you really? I don't think you do. What, because you gave me life? Not good enough. Sorry, I didn't ask for that, and it doesn't excuse everything you did to me since then. She honestly thinks that, and I think she honestly believes that, she can do anything she wants to me and say anything she wants to me and use me however she wants, however she sees fit, and that I still owe her everything at the end of the day. And my father thinks the same. He has explicitly said on multiple occasions how children owe their parents everything. Basically, he believes that it's completely messed up because it's the other way around. He believes that children have to do everything for their parents and owe their parents everything, but really it should be the other way around. Usually it's parents do everything for their kids, But I grew up in a family where I felt like anything my dad did for me, and I'm not talking about crazy things, right? I'm talking about taking me to school every day, which is not something I chose, something I had to do. But he made me feel like I had to earn it. And it was such a sacrifice for him. And I'm like, why did you have me then? Because I wasn't an accident. You wanted to have me. So why are you making me pay for it now? Why are you making me feel like it's a sacrifice for you to take me to school when it isn't even my choice to go? That's the kind of relationship I had with my dad my whole life. And he never bought me anything. I mean, I mentioned in past videos, but what little money he made, he kept to himself. He never contributed to the family, to the household. My mother paid for everything, and she was always the one making birthday and Christmas gifts for me and stuff. And then she would say it's from your dad and me, but I knew perfectly well that my dad hadn't contributed in any way. He couldn't be bothered. So he literally did nothing for me. And the things that he did were things that he liked doing, he did for himself, and I joined him in it. And now he's trying to make me think that he went out of his way to do things for me. But really, it was me adapting to what he liked. Anyways, I could go on and talk for hours about that, about my fucked up family, but it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. All that matters is that blood isn't always thicker than water, and if your family treats you like shit, if you feel like you can't be yourself around them, if you feel like they're trying to change who you are and not accept you as you are, if you feel like they're constantly trying to make you feel bad and feel guilty for everything and feel responsible for everything, don't feel the need to stick around just because you have the same blood. You're only gonna get hurt. And believe me, it's easier said than done. But in the end, you're gonna be happy that you walked away from toxic family. It's gonna do you more good than bad in the end, even though it doesn't seem like it. It doesn't always seem like it at first. That's all that's been happening. That was a lot yesterday, and I felt very overwhelmed, but I feel better now after a good night's sleep. And next week I have my first session with an autistic therapist that I found, so I'm excited for that. I'm excited to see if she can help me figure out how to get out of that burnout and how to break the cycle of chronic burnout, unmask more and cope with social situations in a more comfortable way. I'll keep you posted on that. that's all I wanted to say. I wanted this to be a bit of a ramble. I did. Thanks for watching, liking, subscribing, commenting. I have a Ko-fi page that I will link down below in case you're interested in supporting my channel monetarily, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.